All right. Because it's Valentine's. Oops.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We will start the meeting. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Tersivia. Thank you.
And can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
If not, can we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Okay, proclamations. We have the Florida Association of City Clerks 50th anniversary. Congratulations. City Clerk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Proclamation recognizing the 50th anniversary of the Florida Association of City Clerks, known as FACC, and honoring this achievement. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk is a time-honored and vital part of local government and is one of the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides a professional and essential link between the citizens and the local governing bodies and intergovernmental agencies at the local, state, and federal levels, along with other essential services. And whereas the Florida Association of City Clerks is the professional membership organization for Florida's municipal clerks and others who work within the clerk's office. And FACC began in 1972 when its founder, the late Robert Clark, city clerk of Sunrise, not far from here, saw the need for an organization to bring together like-minded people to unite the voice of all municipal clerks, to share ideas and to assist one another in the work of municipal government. And whereas the FACC celebrates its 50th anniversary in this year, 2022, and the golden anniversary is a momentous occasion worthy of commendation, in Florida's cities, towns, and villages will all join in observation of this celebratory event. And whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas the FACC is a primary source for the educational programs, seminars, workshops, and webinars for educating Florida's municipal clerks and those who serve in the clerk's office, and municipal clerks look to FACC to provide the training needed, needed to obtain their certified municipal clerk and master municipal clerk certifications. And now, therefore, I, Douglas Hillman, Mayor of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, on behalf of the Town Commission, do hereby recognize the 50th anniversary of the Florida Association of City Clerks and commend the association for 50 years of excellent service provided to the municipal clerks of the state of Florida. In witness, wherefore I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, to be affixed this 15th day of February, 2022. And I will sign. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you all.
Moving on, board vacancies, Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board, one vacancy for an unexpired term ending April 30th. I'm sorry, we jumped over public comments.
Yeah. Public comments.
I see a hand moving back there. Come on down.
Thank you, Mayor. Barry Donaldson, 3700 South Ocean Boulevard. So I've been following the fire and rescue facilities with great interest, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank this commission for the very expeditious manner in which you've addressed this. You've really honed down to a good option. I don't know if people really appreciate how tight this schedule is to get this done, but you've certainly done your part to make sure that it has a very good chance of success by doing that. So I just wanted to express thanks to all of you for that hard work and getting that done so quickly. It's very impressive, and I look forward to seeing the next steps. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the thank you.
That's always welcomed.
It is a tight schedule, but rest assured, we will make it. Any other public comments? Sir, are you here for that? No. Okay, moving on, the board vacancies. The planning board also has one vacancy for a 3-year term. Upcoming meetings, February 16th, tomorrow, there's a 1:30 town commission special meeting. That's to review our strategic priorities. February 21st, town hall will be closed in observance of President's Day. March 1st at 1:30, another town commission meeting. On the 2nd at 10 o'clock is Board of Adjustments and Appeals. On the 8th is Election Day. That's from 7 to 7. On the 9th, 1 o'clock is Code Enforcement. And on the 10th at 9:30 is the Planning Board regular meeting. There are no board action reports. There is no ordinances, no consent agenda. We'll move on to unfinished business. And this is now the continued discussion on the fund balance guidelines. And I'll turn that over to Vice Mayor Moore. Natasha, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could turn to page 9 of our agendas. And I imagine the town clerk will put it up on the screen. Excellent. So on page 9, there's just some 3 bullets to kick off the discussion. And this has been presented a couple times here and or variations of this. Thank you very much. At the Town Commission and also at the Financial Advisory Board. So three specific items, whether or not to change our Highland Beach fund policy, which currently has one provision in it that talks about disaster recovery and potentially increasing that. It currently is 18.3% of expenditures, potentially doubling that to be 16.7%. It still leaves us with a good amount of unassigned reserves. So to continue the discussion of what amount of the unassigned reserves to use towards the fire rescue implementation. And as I was going through this, I also wanted to talk about the timing of the expenditures and potentially avoiding the cost of financing. So that was something that kind of dawned on me as I was going through it again. And I thought it was worthy of discussion because the cost of financing is substantial. And if we could avoid it, I think it would be very beneficial for the town. So next page is, hopefully you guys can see that well. Just the numerical values of the, maybe zoom out a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So on page 10, there are essentially two boxes. And if you can zoom out a touch more too, that would be good. Just so that we can see the full two boxes. So the top box shows what we currently have, and I put the dollar amounts that were distributed to us in the first quarter 2022 financial update. So our budget is for 2022 was 13.2 million. And as of the first quarter, the general fund balance was 10.4 million. So I'm just reading from top to bottom. Our current Highland Beach fund policy states that we keep 2 months or 16.7% of the budget as budget stabilization. So that works out to be 2.2 million. And our current fund balance, as I had mentioned before, our policy states that we keep 8.3% as disaster recovery. So that amounts to about 1.1 million. There's a small amount in there because we had gotten a refund during the true up of the fire rescue. So there's about 110,000 that's being held for the fire rescue. Are you able to maybe scroll down so we can see instead of zooming as a challenge? We all have handouts here, but and it's also online. Anybody who's watching online, if you scroll down a little bit, the second box, there, you can leave it like that. I think that's fine. The second box shows obviously the same amount as the general fund balance, the 10.4 million. The same. I don't think anyone's proposing a change for the budget stabilization. The 2 months is seems consistent with what the government accounting board suggests and what other towns do. But to consider increasing the disaster recovery to 2.2 million and make it 16.7% of the budget. And then once you include the true up for the fire rescue, the total assigned reserves would increase to 34.2%. So about a third of our budget. And then that leaves us with close to $6 million of unassigned. And when this was presented to the Financial Advisory Board And just to remind everyone, there was a motion and a recommendation from the Financial Advisory Board to increase the disaster recovery to be the 16.7 and to use the full amount of the unassigned reserves towards a fire rescue implementation. So if we go to the next slide, we had reviewed the insurance coverages months ago when we were looking at our current insurance policy and transitioning it to the public risk insurance advisor. So we had made a change this year in our insurance broker. And I just wanted to, because the disaster recovery, a big part of it has to do obviously with the impact of a hurricane. So I just wanted to remind everyone what our insurance coverages are. So this is taken from our insurance policy. The town has several insurance policies, workers' comp, general liability, and one of them is to cover our property. And the property coverage is in that first line there, which is 26.3 million. So we have insurance covering 26.3 million, which is basically the value of our property here. And then there's lots of other coverages. So the point of this is just to kind of remind you what our coverages are, and also to remind everyone what our deductible is. So in the event of a complete loss, our deductible is, and it's kind of in that deductible section in that like little second paragraph, it's 5% of the value. So it's 5% of that 26.3 million. So the deductible would be about 1.3 million. And I just bring that up because I think that's a factor when we consider how adequate a disaster recovery reserve might be. So setting the disaster recovery assigned reserve to be 2.2 million, that does cover the 5% deductible, assuming a total loss. And if we go to the next page, there are some additional coverages that we have. And I know some things that had come up in the discussion previously. Well, how about expenses for temporary offices that we set up, or, if we have to put something temporary outside to house people. That second line, we do have $1 million in additional expenses that would cover those types of things. So we do have other types of coverages. And that's what the purpose of this page is for. It's basically just to kind of refresh our memories on the discussion that we had a few months ago when we had the insurance broker here. So the next page kind of puts it in dollar terms. So I just wanted to remind everyone, we do have good insurance and we do pay for it. It's 100, just for the property piece, that property insurance policy is 126,000. So we are paying a good amount for property insurance, as you would expect. The covered property value is that 26.3 million, which I took from the previous page, with a deductible being 5%. So if we had a complete loss, the deductible would be 1.3 million. And so the proposed disaster recovery reserve is this 2.2 million. And the reason I show that is because I just want to show the remaining amount of reserve we would have, which is close to 900,000. So I'm just subtracting the assigned reserve less the deductible. Just to kind of give you a sense, there'd be about $900,000 remaining for debris removal and clearing of roads. I've looked into whether or not that peril is insurable. My understanding that is not insurable. So that is something that, we should have as cash on hand. It's very difficult to estimate, what that amount is. But I just want to show you, we would still have $900,000 left over, which is a good amount. Okay. Next, the next slide shows the reserve levels in Highland Beach for our fund balance compared to other towns. And you've seen this exhibit before, and I've separated it into separate slides showing municipalities with similar size budgets. And then on the next slide, I'll show you neighbors, but they have much larger budgets. And one question that had come up recently was, okay, you're telling us what the reserve levels are for these other cities, but can you tell me what specific amounts are they setting aside for disaster recovery? Many of the municipalities actually, or I couldn't find in their financial statements where they specifically said how much is for disaster. And I think they just kind of view it all together. So I would say Tequesta and North Palm Beach, they have 20% for reserves for Tequesta, 30% for North Palm Beach. They didn't get more specific than that in their financial statement as far as what they consider for their disaster recovery. Lighthouse Point, their financial statements are very well documented, and they get very specific in what their assigned reserves are for. So their total assigned reserves are 32% of their budget, and their total budget is about 18 million. And they do get specific. And so 14% of that is what they set aside specifically for disaster recovery. So, and then I failed to mention all the way to the left-hand side, that column represents the Government Accounting Standards Board. They put out a document, item number 54, which they're recommending to municipalities what they believe should be at least their minimum fund balance policy. And so they state it should be at least 17%. So as you can see, everybody else is above that minimum. And then of course, Highland Beach is all the way to the right. We are currently carrying a total of 77% of our budget, and our fund policy states the 25% for total assigned reserves. So the next slide has our neighbors. So now we're on page 15. And to me, these are neighbors that I would want to, look at: Delray Beach and Boca Raton. Delray Beach, I could not find a specific disaster recovery reserve, but they're holding about 27% of their expenditures as reserves. And Boca, they are pretty specific in their financial statements. They're holding about 35% of their general fund expenditures as reserves. Their minimum policy is at least 20%. And they specifically state 10% is for disaster recovery. Now, those budgets are much larger than ours. Delray is at 140 million and Boca is at 188 million. And then for completeness, I just compared it to I created another slide and just compared municipalities with much smaller budgets. Ocean Ridge has a budget of 8 million. They're currently holding 55%. And then we're at 77. And then there's Indian River Shores. They have a budget of about half of ours, and they're carrying 83%. And Juno Beach has a budget of 7 million, and they're carrying 107%, and their minimum policy is 50% of their budget for reserves. So, and then if you're curious where I got all these from, I did put the relevant pages from the Lighthouse Point in case you're curious where I got this from. So this page shows that the budget, that bottom blue line, their budget's about 17, 18 million. And then on the next page, just kind of shows you like where I'm getting this from, in case you want to check my work. And then I did the same thing for Boca Raton. You're wondering where I got it from. These are the relevant pages from Boca. So the next slide is just an illustration of the impact of inflation on the reserves. So the latest first quarter 2022 shows that our unassigned reserves is about $7 million. And the latest estimate for inflation for 2021, and I just did it for the latest year, 1 year. So for 2021, the cost to hold that unassigned reserves was about 490,000. It's a very easy calculation. It's just 7% of that 7 million. And we earn 0.1% of interest on those unassigned reserves. And that is almost by necessity because we have to keep those reserves liquid and it has to be invested in things that protect the principal. We obviously can't lose any of the money that we've collected. So just for illustration purposes, just for 2021, the loss due to inflation is about 420,000. I mean, I could, that's just for 1 year. That doesn't even take into consideration the cost to hold it for the previous years. And my point in just saying this is, I think we look at a lot of items in our budget, a lot of much smaller items in our budget, and we scrutinize them pretty thoroughly. And I think this is an important piece for us to also scrutinize. And so our taxable values for Highland Beach is about 2.7 billion. So to also bring it to the individual, so residents that have a taxable value of 250,000, their share of that 7 million is $640. And that represents about, I was looking at the taxable values and the, how many people have what taxable values. So that represents like there's 1,000 people that have taxable values of like 285,000 and less. Residents with values of 500,000, that 7 million, they have about $1,300 of that $7 million reserve. So a resident with a property that's valued at a taxable value of 500,000, their share of that 7 million is 1,280. And there are about, it's about, I'd say, I don't know, 1,500 people between the value of like 250,000 to 500,000. And then residents that have a taxable value of $1 million, their share of that unassigned reserves is 2,500. So it's not insignificant by resident. And that was the point of me showing this slide. So not only is there the cost of inflation for us to consider, but the cost of financing is also not insignificant. So, and this was taken from a chart that we were shown about 6 months ago. And it has to do with the cost of financing. So to finance about $4.25 million, the total cost of financing was about $360,000. And then all the way on up to, let's say we were to take a bond for $6,475,000, that total cost of financing is $1,675,000. So the point of this is when we take a look at how much of the, unassigned reserves that we want to use, I think the amount of financing is a key piece because it's a lot of money. And I would like to save our town as much as possible. So then that brought me to, I looked a little closer at the timing of the expenditures for the implementation of the fire rescue. We obviously don't need to spend it all at once. We got approval from the voters to spend 10 million. Our current plan has a total implementation cost of about 9.1, 9.2 million. And when we look at the timing of the expenditures, we're currently in fiscal year 21-22. And according to the plan, we are expected to spend about 500 to 600,000 in the current fiscal year. So let's say, so this exhibit shows an unassigned balance of 5.9 million. That assumes that we bumped up the disaster recovery by $1 million so that the disaster recovery is now 2.2 million. You've got the budget stabilization of 2.2 million. You subtract that from the total fund balance and you have about $6 million left over, this 5.9 million. So as of right now, that's our starting balance. By the end of this fiscal year, if we are on track and spend that 600,000, we have, as of September 30th, 2022, we would still have 5.3 million remaining in unassigned. The other thing I want to point out about this exhibit is the plan includes expenditures of about 1.3 million for apparatus. So, and I wasn't sure what the timing of buying the apparatus was. But since we had leased the trucks in the past, my thought was, well, maybe we could lease the trucks that we need to buy and whatever equipment. So this exhibit assumes that we would lease that apparatus. So that's why it's kind of pulled out of the timing of the expenditures in the top box. And then in the next fiscal year, 2022 to 2023, which goes from October 1st, 2022 to September of 2023, which we'll be planning for that, I guess, starting May and throughout this summer, we're expected to spend about 4.6 million. So that unassigned reserves actually carries us through until the end of September 2023. And then for the fiscal period 2023 through 2024, I just want to point out that we terminate with Delray Beach April of 2024. So we should start realizing savings when we go to plan for the budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. We won't have to plug in a full year's worth of the Delray Beach budget.
Right.
But of course, we have to plan for our costs. So we couldn't I started doing this calculation of just removing the Delray Beach portion. I was like, oh, we got plenty of money. But then I realized, oh, we got to pay for our own guys. So that's why there's a savings of only like less than $1 million. Because I think we're expecting about a $2 million a year savings, but it's only half a year. So that does leave us with a deficit when we go to plan for 2023, 2024, which we will start doing, we will plan for in May of 2023. And I just think that over the course of the next year, we should be firming up some of these expenditures and timing of expenditures and this and that. So I just think that we could potentially look at other sources of income. I think by then, hopefully we'll know whether or not we get any of this appropriations money that we have the lobbyists working for us. We also have what's going on with the water rates. I think that's still, we have some time to kind of see how that goes. We have, I know we're all in favor of keeping our tax rates the same, not going up. But perhaps one thought is keeping our tax rate the same, and we would have a reduction due to the debt millage, and moving that over to our municipal millage so that our tax rate is the same. And I believe we get about $1 million from that. So my point is, perhaps we could take like this next year, 18 months, to see where we can come up, if we can come up with this other $1 million without raising overall taxes. And then in my opinion, we don't need to take out loans. We can save ourselves the loans. The other thing that I'll point out is the Government Accounting Standards Board, when they talk about what municipalities should be using their unassigned reserves for, it's exactly this. It's these type of capital projects. So this is exactly the type of project that the accounting board recommends that we use that unassigned reserve for. So I think it has a lot of benefits. We can save, the inflation costs. We can save the financing costs. We already have the money set aside. We have the approval from the voters. So I think it's something that we should strongly consider. So this next page is just from our fire feasibility study. So you can kind of see where I get the savings from. But this next slide, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I wanted to see how our tax rates compared to other municipalities. And what this chart shows is for a resident with a $500,000 taxable value, what their annual real estate tax would be in the different municipalities. And for a resident with a $1 million tax rate, what would their annual real estate tax be for the different municipalities? And we currently are, and the municipalities that I'm comparing us to are Manalapan, Gulfstream, Boca Raton, Lighthouse Point, Ocean Ridge, Juneau, Delray Beach, North Palm Beach, South Palm, and Tequesta. So I chose those because they're neighboring municipalities and they're with coastal exposure. And we currently sit at second lowest. We're pretty close to Gulfstream, but we actually are slightly less than Gulfstream. And if you look at the breakdown, as you know, most of our taxes is county. So anybody in Palm Beach County, 13.3 of the millage goes to the county. I did include a Lighthouse Point is Broward, so I put in their relevant taxes. And then the next column is the tax rate that is just for the municipality. And it's their total tax rate. So it's for the municipality plus any debt service they have. So that is the column labeled total municipal ad valorem. And then I wanted to break it out so that you guys could kind of see what kind of debt other towns have, and then what their municipal and fire component is. So you can kind of compare the different municipalities. And there are a few municipalities that actually don't have any debt. Manalapan, North Palm Beach, and Gulfstream. And then the other interesting thing is, the add-ons, the non-ad valorem, it does actually vary. It does actually vary by municipality. And you can see what that is in the right-handmost column. And the next slide just kind of shows you, like, where did I get this from? So if you look at your own tax bill, you can kind of see all the different line items. So when I created that slide before, all the county pieces are in the county column. And then I pulled out whatever's attributed to the municipality and separated it into the municipal and the debt service. And then on the bottom, there are the add-ons, just to kind of give you a feel for where I got this from. So that concludes the information that I've prepared for you guys today. I wanted to give you more information to understand the cost of holding these unassigned reserves and the cost of financing. And I also wanted to make sure we all were aware of, where we sit with respect to our tax rates compared to other municipalities. I think we're doing a great job. Thank you to town hall staff for keeping our costs very low. So I wanted to open it up for discussion.
Extremely well done, as usual. Okay. A lot of data here to digest. Fortunately, we had it in advance of the meeting. So why don't we start going through it? And John, we'll start with you.
Okay. First, I have to say, it's an impressive piece of work.
Oh, thanks.
I am impressed. It's not easy necessarily, but it's also complete with all the right comparisons, the data. I mean, I could spend hours more just going through this. We can't have any conversation, unfortunately. So it's like I'm asking myself the questions because of sunshine laws, for those who are in the audience. So I guess stepping back without getting, come out of it, all of this data, all of the reports, and I just take a look at what we're trying to do here. We're trying to determine what's an effective rate for our reserves, and especially for those that are unassigned versus for disaster recovery and so forth. In order to do that, you compare it to other towns. Clearly, as we look at Highland Beach compared to other towns, number one, we have a very favorable financial picture. I mean, I'm across the board, thanks to the town management and what's been done, we're in good shape financially. Secondly, we're facing a major project, and we have a significant amount of reserves that the town has accumulated over time. keep in mind, it's somewhat inflated because of this purchase of land or the sale of land in the water department. It was what, 2 million for that? What was the amount for that? Do you know?
3.5.
3.5 million. That is an unbelievable. So honestly, I take that out of the reserves right away and say, okay, well, we have operational reserves, and we have a windfall or the sale of property that we will not be able to do again. We have nothing else to sell unless we want to sell books from the library. I don't know what else we can do. So that's kind of a one-time windfall. Therefore, let's look at what we normally do and rely on those contributions to our reserves. Okay. As I also look at this, we have debt. Clearly, there are some that don't have any debt, some towns, and some have. Nobody really has drowned themselves in debt. It's pretty low overall. Maybe as a percentage and so forth, maybe you can have an argument there, but I think they're fairly all low and well managed in that regard. Okay. When do we pay off the debt that we have right now? Is there any?
Probably over the next, say, 15 years.
It's a long time.
One of our bigger notes falls off, I think, in a couple of years, and it just tails off pretty.
So we're stuck with that.
Well, listen to what he just said. The bigger part of it disappears in the next 2-3 years.
Oh,
Is that
did
correct?
miss that. Okay, well, okay. Then that gives us some breathing room. So I think you've done a fabulous job. Philosophically, I have to go back to, I think, the two fundamental approaches that we should consider. One, to me, I'll go back to the slide on page 10, if you could do that. It shows that you propose to take all the unassigned reserves of 5.9 million, and you're going to use it for fire and EMS over the next 2-3 years. Now, that leaves us with 2.2 million in disaster and budget stabilization of 2.2. Now, if I go to the next page, which really is what I spent some time thinking about, is on page 13, I'm sorry. So you show our insurance. Now, there is a line item under the insurance for land or earth movement, $5 million max. That bothers me to some degree because if we had a breach, I assume this is what earth movement means. No?
I would have to talk to the insurance broker as to
So
what
it's not
specific-
just moving and then a building falls over. It's also, I think, we have a breach in the dune. And if we had a disaster, a hurricane that would breach the dune, it's probably going to cost more than 5 million when you consider everything else. I got to believe it is. Watercraft is not included, and we've just taken on that. So there are some concerns about our coverage, but I'm not suggesting we increase coverage. I'm saying, in the worst case scenario, I don't think insurance is going to solve all of our problems. So then I go back to page 13 and I say, okay, so you take covered property, the loss, assuming a complete loss, we pay $1.3 million deductible. And then we have 2.2 in disaster recovery. That only leaves us 900 for removing trees and branches. I mean, honestly, if we have a disaster, we're going to lose a lot more, whether it's, dunes, walls, certainly trees, our paved roads. There's a lot of stuff we could lose. And I just don't see that we should take the risk to rely on $900,000. I mean, to spend $900,000 these days on anything, it's amazing how little you get, okay? And how little it will be in the future. And that's the inflation factor. And I do appreciate what you're what you've done a brilliant piece of work to try and illustrate that. I just fundamentally have a problem with $1 million. So then I go back and I say, look, this idea of using all of the reserves of $5.9 million for fire EMS at a time when interest rates are low, I think it would be in our interest not to borrow $5 million, but something, $1 million, $2 million at these low rates, and give us some flexibility, because I'd like to see disaster recovery not be 16.7. I'll go to 25%. And I might even go, well, we won't have true ups anymore, thank goodness, right? But on unassigned, I don't want it to be zero. Okay, I just don't. No, should it be $1 million or $2 million? I think that depends on how much we want to borrow. But I just feel it makes me nervous for the town. Forget the town. If I was an individual and looking at my home, I'd be nervous. And that's what makes me jittery about this, even though I see all these numbers and all of the charts and the reports, and you've dug in this on a level that, is remarkable, but it makes me uncomfortable. So that's where I am. I think that we do have to put more money into disaster recovery, or, and this is the other side of the equation, when you use up all the unassigned, what flexibility do we have to buy peanuts for our truck stops or whatever we might want to do in the future? We don't have anything. It's either budgeted or else. We have no other flexibility. And I don't know what that number should be either. That's something we need to talk about. And the difficult part with all of this, I'd love to be able to just sit down and talk with you about this and let's brainstorm it a bit. But since we can't do that, I think I have to say, disaster recovery should get more money. And I think we should have some unassigned reserves. And we can argue about what those numbers should be. How's that? That's a long-winded response. I'm sorry to take so long.
I just want to point out just a couple of things. So there are going to be savings from the fire department, once we get through, just to
Would you
remind.
say that again, please?
So once we get through fiscal April 2024, we do start accruing savings again, because our Highland Beach Fire Department should cost us less than what we currently have budgeted for Delray. So just to keep that in mind.
But we won't see, hard numbers until 25.
Well, you'll see in the first month, hopefully.
Yeah, so May
you're
of
correct.
2024, there
Okay.
should be a savings, and the other thing I would just say, that 3.5 million, I agree, it's a one-time thing, but I mean, it's by keeping that in cash, it's just diminishing in value. I guess, I agree, it's only a one-time thing. It may not come about, although I would remind you of the savings that we'll get for the fire department, but is holding that 3.5 in cash that is diminishing in value because of inflation. Is that also the right thing? I guess I would just remind us of that. And then my other question, Commissioner Shoemaker asked about the dunes. Who's responsible for the dunes?
We are above the from the high water mark, right? Forward, it's our town.
State of Florida,
So if
federal
we-
waters, yeah.
Whoa, so wait a minute. So if we lost a portion of our dune completely, you're telling me the Florida's gonna come in and pay us for it?
FEMA, federal.
Huh?
I don't know if they'd pay us right away. That goes to the cash flow stuff,
Right.
which is tricky.
Right.
Eventually, hopefully, maybe.
Okay.
If they saw the value to protect the inland portions, you saw that, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but in New York, they did that with Fire Island, where they rebuilt Fire Island to protect the inland areas. They saw the value of the barrier island. So if we got hit with something like that and say it ripped the island in half, would they determine it's valuable to put it back to protect the inland in the future?
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
and it also depends on the magnitude of it. There's a lot of
Right.
ifs.
And
it's a
we've had
possibility.
barrier islands off of Massachusetts that were breached, and they made the decision that says, well, that's nature, we should let it ride and not replace it.
A lot of variables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your point is very well taken. And I'm not saying we shouldn't necessarily keep 6 million in unassigned. I don't think it's zero either. I think those are the two extremes.
Yeah, and you make a lot of good points. The other thing, and I understand your perspective, looking at it as an individual versus a town. As an individual, yeah, I mean, you have a different approach to whatever savings or whatever, but this is a municipality that is a taxing authority who can't invest as an individual. You can invest whatever way you want. We are very limited in the way that we can invest. And we are a taxing authority. So, and we could probably borrow in the future if we really needed to. And, I know we don't know what those future interest rates will be. So that's just something to continue to keep in mind. But yeah, it is kind of what we are comfortable with as a town to keep in savings or not. So.
Okay, F.
Okay, thank you. It was a very well done project, even if I don't completely agree with you. I do agree we need to put more in disaster relief because I agree with John. $900,000 left to me is nothing.
Wow.
And if we have to spend all of that, how do we replace it? Because we have nothing to replace it from. And it's the same thing with savings from the fire department. That's operating budget savings. So are we going to provide that when we save that money, instead of just lowering the cost of operating, we're going to put it back into reserves? I mean, I'm going to make an analogy where you buy an apartment and you only have $10,000 left in the bank. And the next thing you know, you're hit with a special assessment and you don't have it. So going out at the last minute to try to finance things like that, to me, that's a lot worse than keeping some. I agree some of the reserves should be spent towards this project, but I also agree that with low interest rates, I think that we should definitely borrow. And we can see if perhaps we can pay off those loans sooner. Use the savings to pay off the loans as opposed to emptying the piggy bank. It just gives me a bad feeling when there's no backup. And $900,000 is no backup. That's my thoughts.
Peggy, on to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was just looking up Hurricane Michael because last week Governor DeSantis allocated 91 million for rebuilding the Panhandle, which hit. And Hurricane Michael was 2018. And just now they're getting funding from the state through the economic, hang on, let me give you the exact title, Florida Department of Economic Opportunity Rebuild Florida Mitigation General Infrastructure Program. So I also, having spoken to people in public service from the Panhandle in the past, their immediate support came from nearby towns, cities, even faraway towns and cities, that it takes the state and the federal governments years sometimes to actually render assistance. So I just wanted to clarify that just from what I've heard. And clearly the state would be responsible, as Mr. Labadie said, for the damage to the beach up to the high water mark, and then the individual property owner, I believe that insurance would kick in. So just wanted to clarify what I knew about that. My comments is I tend to agree a bit with Commissioner David that it worries me to pull that much funding out. And I wondered if we should take a look at a couple of optional fund levels. I actually called Greg Bobby over the weekend. He and I, when he was serving up here, had discussed this along with commissioners back then. And he provided a chart, which his concern was, and unofficially as a resident who had looked at this in the past, that the inflation rate is such a variety of, well, the pattern looks like, I don't know what, and I'll copy this to everyone, but the rate it is now compared to the rate 2 years ago, 1 year ago, there's such a variance. Maybe we should factor in the numbers for the inflation that you cited. But I would be interested in securing a good amount of the funding from the reserves, but perhaps a degree less. I'm not sure the amount, maybe 1/3, maybe even the 900 for a starting point. And I think that there might be a bit of a compromise here, and to what number that is, we can further discuss. I wanted to say, I always wondered as a resident before coming up here, I think the sale of the water plant was about 2008. I tried to find that just now. So for this entire time that those monies have been sitting in the reserve, and that's a long time. So it's like, when do you take your savings out and fix up your house? Well, maybe this is time to take a good portion, but I'd be interested in the mayor having been on the finance board and all of us coming on board and looking at it and as to what number that would be. I just don't want to dump out quite as much as Commissioner or Vice Mayor Moore had stated. One other question I had, if I could. Never mind, I've got that. It was 3.5 million from the sale of the water plant. So that's it for me, and I'm open to continuing to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor was on the finance board also. Okay.
Of course, I failed to mention that, of course. And she did a superb job with this. I have to add on kudos, Girl Scout badges, whatever we need to thank her for this amazing report. Thank you.
So I did get a comment from Greg Babby. I don't know if you want me
Yeah,
to say it.
sure.
Okay. Thank you to Greg Babby for reviewing this, and he provided me some comments. He also noted about inflation. And yeah, so that inflation, that 7% inflation was just 1 year's inflation for 2021. I totally agree. The rate of inflation has varied throughout the years. And I could have added in inflation from previous years. It would have only increased the loss. It's really just an illustration of the latest year. It would have added the complexity to the calculation, but it would have only grown more than the,
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I'm not saying that it's 7% a year, but in the previous years definitely varied. And then his point was he also would prefer, it sounds like he's good with increasing the disaster recovery to the 2.2 million, but then he's saying I would still leave a bit of cash unassigned in case of unforeseen non-emergency stuff. I mean, I guess I look at his comments. I think if I were to translate that into policy, like I think maybe he would do the 2 months of budget stabilization, keep that the same, obviously, increase the disaster recovery to 2 months, and then add, another % or something for unassigned, to call that unassigned, leave some amount of unassigned. So that was his comment.
Listen, if you wanted to throw in inflation into the discussion, you'd spend everything now, tomorrow. You wouldn't wait, because with inflation, it's worth less in the future. And then we could debate, is it 7.5%? What's it going to be in 6 months? But I don't think we want to do inflation.
You don't believe that inflation is transitory?
Not anymore. Have you, Marshall, gotten any more information on, is it 7 million? Is it 6.5? Is it 5? What's the number?
I'm going to stick with David's number that we're about 7.2 with the closeout. Now the audit may pull it in either direction by
Okay, so we
2 to
should,
3% could go in either direction. It could be 7.285. It could be
All right.
7.
So we're,
0.1. It could be somewhere in that vicinity
so
for
we're-
this discussion is safe.
we're good with the number. Okay,
Yep,
fine.
yep,
Okay. Just one thing to go back on. The fact that we earned 0.1%, that is terribly unfortunate. The previous finance director was avoiding doing anything on the investments. Not that they could be 10%, by no means. We're very restricted, but it should definitely have been more than the 0.1% that we were receiving.
You'll see it tomorrow on your strategic priorities plan
Yeah.
to fix that
Okay.
problem.
So we definitely got hurt on that. Cost us some significant money, but not $500,000. Okay. In terms of doubling the disaster recovery, I'm certainly in favor of that. I think that's a good move. I think it gives us a little better cushion. Bank's another $1 million. Clearly the right thing to do. Total in agreement on that. My years might be off, but I think the chart that you had shown us a couple of meetings ago, you showed the growth of the unassigned reserves. A few years it dropped down, but if you straight line it, it shows steady growth. It was about a 20-year growth pattern, I think it was.
16 years, yeah,
Okay.
over 16
So
years.
it brought us up to the 7 million-ish number. But you have to remember that 3.5 million or 50% of that was the one time from the sale of that land. So basically in 20 years, we were able to sock away $3.5 million in 20 years, virtually nothing. So that's not a good history in terms of adding to our reserves. Doesn't mean that we can't do better in the future, but historically we have done very poorly in adding to reserves. I believe in opportunity money, that we should always be able to take advantage of opportunities that exist. If we spend all of the reserves, we don't have opportunity money. And that opportunity money the opportunities can take on various forms. They can also be need money. We're going to have a fire department. We're going to have 4 vehicles. Those vehicles can break down and we can have need money. Unfortunately, it's not a breakdown like a car. These breakdowns are very expensive. So we need monies for that. We also need monies for, again, opportunities. I don't know what they are, but let's say we didn't have our crosswalks. And the idea comes to us, let's do crosswalks. Well, you need money to handle those crosswalks. So I think we need some money in there. But statistically, taking it to zero, as you have shown, is statistically the right thing to do. No question about it. And you've proven it, unequivocal. But I'll go back to my word opportunity. We need opportunity money. We also need money in the reserves to balance our budget every year. Every year, we have used it for pledging money from reserves. I recall when I was sitting out there, Peggy, you had to pledge 700,000 or 750,000, I recall the exact number, because of a surprise that came to the commission 2 weeks before you had to finalize the budget. Well, if you didn't have any money, couldn't have done it.
It was the night before at
The night
7
before.
PM.
Forgive me.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right.
but-
Like June 1st of 2018. I about fell out of my chair.
Okay, so things happen. And if we don't have money there, no, that's really extreme. I don't expect that's going to happen again. But $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 has been pledged each time. Fortunately, not used. But you got to have the money in order to pledge it. Things like that. So we need money in the reserves for that. I don't believe taking it to zero is the appropriate thing to do for the town. How much we take it to is, I think, the debate we need to have. When all this started, I had $2 million in my mind. You've convinced me 2 million is too much. Okay. Now, do we take it to 1 million, 1.5 million? I think somewhere in that world is where we should be. My concern is fire department. That's why my number goes up a little bit more, plus opportunity. That's where my head is right now. The other thing is, you're 100% right. Once we start our own fire department, our running cost per month should be lower because we don't have the big Del Rey number, and we should be running on an annual rate of a couple of $1 million lower. Now, we as a commission, now who knows what our operating budgets are going to be in 2024 and beyond, but whatever they are, they should be $2 million less than what they would have been had we stayed with Del Rey. Now, our decision has to be, what do we do with that savings? In my mind, that savings comes off the bottom line of the budget. So it's possible that our operating budget might be lower than it is right now. It's possible. Now, we could make the decision that we don't lower it and we put the money into reserves. Or it might be we just lower it, lower the mill rate. I think at all costs, we protect our mill rate. I think that's one of our obligations to our community, is not to raise the mill rate. Unless we absolutely have to. I think that's our obligation. We need to run the town effectively. We need to make sure everything is safe and done properly. But I don't see raising the mill rate unless we absolutely had to. You had your finger up. You wanted to say something.
Yes, sir. I thought when I saw these numbers, perhaps we should include this in a manager's minute, because in the numbers of the mill rates of comparable
Great
towns.
idea.
Because I'm not even sure our residents realize that we and Marshall and staff have done a superb job. I'm patting myself on the back. I didn't mean that, but that their mill rate.
Go right ahead.
No, I didn't mean it that way, but that they really do have a very, very carefully protected mill rate. And I don't think they know that, just
No,
because
they don't.
they don't call up town hall and say, how's my mill rate
Yep.
today? So
Yeah,
if we could let
And
people
we
know that
might,
we've worked.
who
very
knows,
hard
we
for
might be
that.
able to lower the mill rate.
Right.
As long as we take care of everything appropriately. So we're going to be faced with some decisions to make. The other reason I think we should be looking at financing is we're never going to see rates like this again in a long, long time. Rates are going up. I mean, I kept saying the rates are going to go up 3-4 times this year. Bear Stearns just said they're going up 6 times. I mean, nobody knows how much they're going up, but they're definitely going up. I made a couple of calls to some banks just, to try to give some information to Marshall to help them out before we get, somebody, a consultant in to look at financing for us. And just on the phone, I was able to get 2%. I'm sure through the state, we can get better than that probably. We're not going to see this kind of money for a long time. And you can always prepay it, whatever we end up doing on a loan. So I think for a number of reasons, borrowing today is the right thing to do. Not the whole deal by any means, but whether it's whether we borrow a couple of million, I mean, it's nothing in terms of the overall. And it gives us more flexibility as well. And I think flexibility is key because we're going to have a big fire department we're going to have to feed. And there are some things we probably haven't considered yet. I mean, we got somebody here to make sure that we do everything right, but stuff happens. And I think we need to have a cushion. You were going to say something.
So what I'm hearing everybody say, and I'm actually very surprised that we seem to be on the same track. Amazing, without being able to talk to each other, that we look at this and say, we really need unassigned reserve capability. And I think what you've just outlined, if I could summarize it, is we need emergency money. That's disaster recovery. We need opportunity money, which is a great expression to use as a way of tracking what might happen that we need to do. And we don't even know what those opportunities are right now, but they will come forward, no question. Given, how we've been operating, we're looking forward in a very progressive way to do what's right for the town. And we have budget contingencies, where I certainly have to have that. I also wonder if we need to understand that right now we're assuming the budgets that we have in all cases won't be exceeded, right? There's always going to be a surprise. And I'm always wondering in the case of fire EMS, if we're going to have a surprise, because we are going to want to maybe do a few extra things now that we understand we should have curtains or whatever, you know, it's a surprise, there's going to be more money. And at the same time, all of this, we should take advantage, leverage the low interest rates. Now, based on all of that, it would seem you don't want to have a zero balance and unassigned. I think we're in agreement that we are. It's important to the town to have that kind of assurance, financial assurance that we're on. Not only have we demonstrated a solid financial track record, and we're on solid financial ground now, and we have that in comparison. And I think that chart is excellent, by the way, and that you raised, Commissioner Garza-Simon, that it is something we should promote to the town, maybe
Sure.
distribute it in one of your releases. But overall, we're managing this appropriately without necessarily putting all our money down on, oh, we don't need them at all in the
Yeah.
case of unassigned.
Well, I think, John, we have to be ultra conservative. It's not our own business. You know, I don't believe there's a big win in using all of it. And I think the conservative approach is what I went for here. And I think that's our fiduciary responsibility and our fiscal responsibility to the town.
So you wouldn't have bet on the Bengals?
You know, if this was a business and it was our own business, the statistics tell us to do something here. And I might be convinced to go in that direction, but it's not our business. And I don't think the win is big enough. That's why I come out with, you know, let's keep $1.5 million. You might want to hold off on doubling the disaster recovery until we take the $1.5 million up to 2.5 and then do it at that point.
Yeah.
I could be convinced on that, but I don't, you know, I think we're starting to try to, you know, rub quarters to get dollars here. So I wouldn't do it, but.
So where do we go from here, Mayor? What's the
I
next
would
step?
just-
I'm sorry.
We have to have in that disaster recovery enough to cover our deductible.
Okay.
Right
so-
now, we don't.
All right. So let's
So
not even consider
then
that.
It's
then.
a real problem if you can't cover that deductible.
Yeah. So let's not even consider that then. I mean, everybody agrees that we should double the disaster. So I don't know that that's even a discussion.
Well, I mean, there are a million combinations of how we can do this. So what I illustrated in this exhibit is a complete loss. Like, are we gonna definitely, you know, what are the chances of having a complete loss and having the deductible be 1.3? So what a lot of other municipalities do is they don't even identify a specific disaster recovery. They just have a certain amount of unassigned reserves, like 30%, that just covers any kind of anything,
Yeah.
you know, and they probably discuss among each other, okay, in my mind, you know, 15% of that 30% is for disaster, but they just are not specifically stating that in their policy. And I can kind of see a benefit to that, because then you're not having to specifically use it for something, so that if something else comes up and it's not considered disaster recovery, there's more flexibility. I can kind of see both sides to it.
Yeah. I'm not big on locking money,
Right.
as you know.
Right,
I mean, I'm kind of going along with the crowd here. You could convince me not to do it.
right. I think what you're saying, as long as everything all together is a third or 50%, or, you know,
Yeah.
I always relate it back to expenditures. I mean, I think I'm hearing you guys say, you know, you want 40% of expenditures in reserves, whether we call it budget stabilization, disaster recovery, and, you know, whatever. You know.
Yeah. I'm not that big on earmarking,
Right.
but everybody else is, so I'm okay with it. You know, it's only locking up another $1 million. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so you could potentially write the policy as, you know, 16.7% budget stabilization, let's say 8.3 disaster, and then another percentage that is kind of a minimum unassigned reserves that we want to keep. I think that is a
Yeah.
possibility.
I mean, you know, it's expressed as a percentage of, So 20 years from now, it might be too much.
Exactly. I don't know. No, that's why you do it as a percentage instead of a dollar, is so that it doesn't get out of whack or whatever. But I like the percentages. I think it targets the total budget properly.
Yeah, what I was saying though is if you doubled our budget,
Mhm.
would you want that to be as big a number as it would be?
As a percentage, yeah. Yeah, I would, because if
does
the budget doubles, that means costs to replace certain things in the fire department or here also doubled. So I think it automatically tracks inflation. So yeah, I do like it being a percentage. And I think
Okay.
it does keep it the relativity correct.
Then leave it.
Good.
Yeah. go ahead.
Just short term is fine. Long term, if everything's a fixed percentage, eventually it could come to a point where you're having to direct large sums of budget dollars to meet your percentage obligations.
Right. That's my point.
Not now. I mean,
But
you're
it could
good
be
for now.
visited by future commissions in 10 or 20 years.
You could also just, if there's an amount, because we're in a short-term project, you could also just pick an amount and assign that to be used at your discretion for the project. So if you all come to 5 million, we're comfortable with spending that on the project, just say 5 million in the fire fund. It's locked in there. And that's basically a locked amount to use through that too.
Good.
I don't know if it, don't make everything a percentage, because then you could find yourself
No,
up to a
agreed.
large number
Yeah,
of percentages that have to be funded by policy obligations.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
Mix is
we
good,
should
too.
lock this thing out. Is there more discussion to be had on this? Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a practical question, and maybe Marshall could answer this, but I racked my brain to think of what are the worst case scenarios we would have. And of course, hurricane would be the most logical one. And I'd be interested in knowing what comparable town had spent on clearing streets, which would be our number one priority. And I'm thinking what else could happen, because the state and federal governments cover the beaches and then the intercoastal, and then private property owners, they're covered. And so I'm thinking what sinkholes or a fire at the fire department. So I just wondered if there's any sort of basis we could look into other towns and what their worst case scenario was and what they spent. Is there such a graph? I don't know. I mean, other than hurricanes, what else? I don't know.
Yes,
Tornadoes
you did.
with changes in climate.
Right,
We
right.
are much
Yeah,
more
true.
susceptible to tornadoes now than we have been. And a tornado can be much more devastating as it whips a path through. It just rips up everything in its way.
Sure. I just wondered if there were any data, specific expenditures by other towns.
Well, I had put
scenarios.
together, I had shared at a previous meeting, the city of the city of Panama City. They estimated 400 million over 5 years. And I had shared with you how they paid for it. It was a combination of FEMA and insurance and letter of credit and all that. The other thing I'll point out is our deductible for Windstorm is the highest deductible we have. So for example, let's say it's just a flood, the deductible is actually like really low. Like it's nowhere near this 5%. If we have a fire that burns everything, I mean, our deductible is like nowhere near 5%. The reason I chose that, because that's our biggest deductible and the disaster that we're probably the most likely to have. But our deductibles are much smaller for other perils other than windstorm. So something else to consider.
The other thing about tornadoes, they are, as you said, vastly more destructive, but they're contained in smaller areas, smaller geographies.
Okay, thank you. And I'll review that Panama information,
Yeah, it
because I
was
do
the other
recall that
meeting.
now. It was a couple months ago.
It was the other meeting I
just-
presented at, and I presented the pages where
Yeah.
it was in there and all the.
Yes, I
amounts
remember.
are
I'll pull that
outlined.
back up. I
Mhm.
saved everything. Thank you.
So do we need a
Just talk about a general direction.
general, I think the general direction is to double the disaster recovery. I think everybody's in agreement on that.
Do I get a head shake
And-
from everybody?
Are we in agreement
Okay.
on using all of the unassigned reserves up to 1.5 million saving? Not to include 1.5 million, leaving 1.5 million in the unassigned.
Yeah.
I could
You wanna
present
leave
that.
more than 1.5 million
Yes.
or less than a
No,
million?
more than 1.5 million.
Too
Million
bad.
and a half leaves me feeling very shaky.
All
No,
right, what do
it's
you want to leave?
The unknown is the unknown.
Okay, how much
2
do
million.
you, how much?
Do I
you
hear
wanna
2
leave?
million?
I would, a minimum of 2 million, preferably 2.5.
Okay.
I could present it at 2, and then you guys can debate which way you want to go from there. And that way we have a document, a resolution that kind of matches that policy update. And then at least I give you something from here that took the next step. And that way you guys can have your next discussion on that piece. And I would move it relatively quickly, try to get it to you for the next meeting. Point being, when I give my update later, I've been talking with our financial advisor. At some point, we got to tell them what we're looking for and what we're spending, so they know what to target a product for that borrowing.
Okay, when you talk to the financial advisor, we'll talk a little more about the number before we move on. Make sure you talk with him though about a construction loan, because we want to draw on it. Big difference in terms of,
Right.
We'll talk a
Interest.
different, he's
okay.
looking at various things. Right now, we got to get a contract first before he totally, but he's mentioned, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You can have a bifurcated product too, where you could borrow for something on a shorter term inside the larger umbrella loan for all of it. And then we're going to avoid the prepayment penalties. I think somebody said that was really good. We got to make sure that should we have more money or do better and we want to just get
Right.
rid of it, we have that option still available in shortening that term.
right. So John, your number to be left is
2.
and yours, Evelyn, is 2.
2.
Yours is,
I'm 2. I'm fine with 2.
and yours is still 0, or you have a different?
Yeah, I would do 0. I would definitely do 0. We're a taxing authority. We could increase it. But hearing all the feedback, hearing, other, Greg Babby's, his was 900. Yeah, I could go along with 1 million. I think anything more than that, I am concerned about using the residents' funds efficiently. I also, as part of the draft, can you also firm up, what is the cost of financing? So that we can get a.
Sure, I'll talk with John as we move, and I'll tell you who John is in a little bit later, but we could look at what the market rates are looking like. and
But not
who-
just the market rate. There's also expenses associated with,
Already have
just-
their expenses.
you do already have their expenses. So
It's a
I would
fixed
like,
number, whatever we borrow. So I'm saying, I was kind of joking around with the FAB. Don't put me in a spot to borrow $500,000 or $1 million and we're spending 50 to go get it. Sometimes
exactly,
that starts to,
exactly.
looks like a real
It doesn't
dog
make
trying to get that
sense.
kind of loan. So we
Exactly.
borrow at least enough to justify the expenditure. There's a little bit of specialized legal counsel we need, financial advice. It's not terrible, but we just need to take a look at that. Sure. If he gets the contract to me, you'll have the contract in your hands relatively quickly. It doesn't need commission approval. That's how low the number is. So
Right.
it's doable.
So I'd be willing, I'd like 0, but I'd be willing to go up to 1 million to compromise. And I would also like to be able to see hard estimates or better estimates of what it is to find the cost of financing.
Sure. I can do that.
To be able to make a better decision.
Excuse me, you said, what as a compromise?
I'd be willing to go up to 1 million.
You'd go to 2.
No, I'd go to 1 million.
Oh, you go to 1 million.
1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Like
I'm
to go
1.5.
2.
So we have 3.
I'm going up to 1 million. I was at
Okay.
0.
No, we're making
I'm
progress.
compromising
We're
with
making-
1 million.
We're making progress. We have 3 at 2 million. We have 1 at 1 million. We have 1 at 1.5 million. Add it up, divided by 5, it comes out to 1,750,000.
Well, it's going to be a debate. We'll talk about it. We're not voting on it now, right? We're going to look at the expenses and we'll,
So
I think,
that's where we are
Place
right
your
now.
bets now.
And we'll find out what the rough expenses would be if we were to finance 1,750,000.
not finance 1,750,000, leave.
Leave a million,
and
excuse me,
then
leave 1,750,000.
Whatever. And then I guess what is the timing of that, right? Because we don't really need that money until the next time we do
Well,
budget.
your arbitrage rules, so long as we're not investing it, and we have certain protections in the time expenditures of that money. So we can, I would suggest
That's the last money.
sooner would be
Exactly.
better with
Exactly.
an increasing rate environment. Now
Yeah,
is
you wanna
better than
line it up.
later. And from what I'm hearing, since we do all our business with PNC is going to be very aggressive to lend us the money because they're our custodian, they hold our normal accounts. Those types of scenarios will present themselves in a favorable.
I haven't done municipal financing, but I've done a lot of financing, but never municipal. But you always want to negotiate them against a couple of others.
Oh, we will.
Right?
I'm just saying,
So
they're suggesting they'll be very aggressive
I
to get our
agree. So
business.
just let me finish, okay? So, but I'm with you. We want to lock that rate up as quickly as we can, even though we're not going to use it down the road. So, and again, I don't know what kinds of municipal financing types there are, but in the corporate sector, generally one would do this as like a construction loan, so it's a drawdown. So we wouldn't even start drawing it for a couple of years, year and a half at least. So if there's a way to do it in a similar mode, that would be great. So if we could lock it now, but don't draw on it for a while. Because as you're suggesting, we don't need it right away. We'll use our money at the get-go, and this would be the last money we would use. But we want today's rate if we could do it. That's the point I was trying to make.
That's the problem. Plus, I do know that as a taxing authority, we can always raise the money. But then that means increasing our millage rate, which is what we said we didn't want to do.
No, this wouldn't affect our military. at all.
No, this would not, but there was a comment that we are a taxing authority, so we can always get it. And while technically that is true, also on a practical basis, you can't get that all at once. And it's only, you get it on an annual. So if you need it in between, it becomes a problem. I mean, it becomes a,
Not necessarily.
a
There
logistic-
are other things we could pledge because we have other incomes. So, because we're not talking about a lot of money here. So there may be some other opportunities. Okay? Talk about it later. Okay. Anything else on this before we move on? Well done. Great discussion.
Excellent.
Okay, next on the agenda is new business. This is to approve and authorize town staff to execute an agreement with Airgas USA. You want to take care of that?
Yeah, so basically it's.
Page
a-
30, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, it's a two-part thing. Carbon dioxide is difficult to get. One provider. They won't offer it directly on their piggyback rate with St. John's. They have a provision that has to be a little bit more for the cost of delivery from source. It's just, there is nobody else providing it. So the alternates to it is putting these huge systems in. We can't do that. So the idea is which is the best interest. So 4 of you have to agree to do this. If 4 of you agree to do this, then we, for the next year, will be able to procure the carbon dioxide needed to treat the water as described by Pat in his memo. But we need it the way the system and structure is set up currently. It's just one of those products on the market that are just difficult to find. Making it yourself is very expensive. So the guys have called around. This is the best thing we can do. So in order to satisfy the contract, it's in the best interest to move forward this way.
And if we don't agree, we don't get water.
Yeah, we're gonna be in a spot. Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. We'd be in a spot. Yeah.
It might be water, but you may not want to drink it.
There you go.
No, I mean, we would do it up to I would have
I'm
to, I don't
kidding
know.
with you.
No
I'm
one
kidding.
else has bid
Anybody
on
hit-
it, you know, you kind of stuff.
Anybody have any questions? Just-
No.
My only question, am I?
Yeah, go right ahead.
It looks like it was already budgeted for
We have-
this amount.
We've got the appropriate budget. It's just procuring it from the vendor itself has posed to some problems. And they're basically saying because getting it, producing it, trucking it, all the things you hear, unfortunately, on the news is coming to play on getting carbon dioxide.
But it has no impact on our budget. It's
No.
in there.
Yeah. We budgeted for it under these scenarios. It's just allowing us to pay the vendor per policy, purchasing policy.
Okay. I see no issue.
Anybody, anything else?
Oh, good.
Entertain the motion.
We have to
Oh,
discuss.
wait a minute, sorry.
Glenn wants a certain provision, so I'll make sure Glenn reviews it before it goes out the door and gets signed.
General language. I mean, it's a good contract with St. John's, there's a couple of unique comments.
Okay, would you repeat what?
So basically,
You just said-
there's an IG provision that we put in all contracts. Obviously, St. John's is different because they don't have their own IG office, so there'll have to be an addendum assigned to this, which I'm sure Airgas would sign without issue. They're pretty upstanding business. I've never heard anything bad about them. So yeah, just a couple extra provisions we'll get in and have Glenn look at it before it's signed and executed.
Also, on page 31, section 4, there are some decisions that have to be made. Are you going to have a restricted charge of $200 every time they make a delivery? Are you going to pay $65 a month to install a unit that monitors so they bring the carbon dioxide when we need it, so we never run out? I mean, these
Well-
things have to be discussed.
I don't know that we can nail it down to every single time. We will do everything to accommodate deliveries and make it so we don't have to pay the $200 delivery charge. I'll have to work with Pat and Dave to see, how we can accommodate this. I mean, if they want to drop it off at 3 o'clock in the morning, is somebody here to, which we do have an operator, just making sure the operator can let them into the building and stuff.
So Commissioner David, are you saying that we should be involved in making these decisions, or we are approving the contract?
We
for-
are, but these are options that
They need to
it's
resolve.
not a set contract unless we discuss
We have to
those
select some of those
options.
things.
Yeah, but the point is they will do that as part of this contract. The water department will work through that. And they are variables. They don't necessarily have to come to us for decision-making, correct?
I don't know. I feel uncomfortable unless we give some absolute direction, because in my mind, then it's not a set contract.
What do you recommend? We do.
Okay. If it were me, I'd make the town available 24/7. And I would use the telemetry monitoring, because that pinpoints when we need things.
Yeah, but we now have the option of electing that use. I'm not sure that we're now getting into the details of when and how to receive deliveries and do these things as part of a contract. This is more operational detail rather than commission strategy. I don't know if we're micromanaging this, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree, because $200 or making someone come in the middle of the night might be more than $200, right? I mean, then maybe leave that up to operations to figure that out. And
Well,
Yeah.
I think Marshall was telling us from the get-go here, we don't have a whole lot of choice.
right.
We could do some of it, not do some of it. If it's really more debate, I'll have to get Pat here. Answer those specific questions to see if we can do it 24/7, put in a telemetry system. Is $65 a month or it's $75 a month for the service call? So we're, $10 a month over the next 12 months, $120. I think we're, a little
Okay.
too specific
No.
over a small
Yeah, this
amount.
is, yeah.
That's
I mean,
all.
it's just either or, it's not both.
Mhm.
So we're talking about $120.
Okay,
I'd let it pass if you're comfortable. Either
okay,
way.
Okay.
yeah. I'm
Okay.
with that.
Mayor,
Yes,
just curious, it seems like a monopoly here, but were there many more vendors just in recent past or 10 years ago, or do we know the history of this?
From what they're telling me, they've called around. This is the only person that will deliver it right now. So
Right
we're
now,
kinda
or we just
stuck.
don't know in the past?
Mhm. And it's the supply. It's
I
basically what it is. And it's related to, a lot of it comes from refineries. So if the refinery is slow, they don't produce it as much, truck it. We looked at putting our own system in to make it. That's really, really expensive, and we haven't got to that cost benefit piece. But again, if it continues to be a problem, we have to make our own. That's kind of a little expense to do that, or revise our system somehow. And I think they're looking at that as well. Like, can we get away with not using it in something else, a different, with reverse osmosis, we basically clean the water to its purest form.
Right.
And then we have to put stuff back in the system on the way out. But we're not there yet. So we need, in the meantime, to maintain.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? We good?
We're good.
Okay, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the contract to purchase carbon dioxide from Air Gas USA LLC
Seconded.
with the amendment.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is item B, can be found on page 44. It's to approve and authorize the mayor to execute a interlocal agreement for the fire rescue dispatch service. And Glenn is going to take us through it.
All
Yeah, I think we're on that. All right,
Good
so
afternoon, sir.
how you doing? Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. To jump ahead of myself. Yes, so in 1969, as you read in the cover memo, the state made some changes in the way municipalities could cooperate with one another in the region. And so Palm Beach County has used that in the 70s to add to your ad valorem taxes funds to pay for the sheriff's office. In the 2000s, Palm Beach County Fire Rescue did the same thing to deal with dispatch and emergency communications, what we call PSAP, point of access, public safety point of access. So as a result, any municipality in the county that uses a 911 system, they could actually basically do an ILA with the county, and the county will provide them with that service at no additional cost, which is what we're doing. Now, Delray already does that, so you're already part of that system. But because we're going to separate ourselves from their services, Highland Beach has to make an ILA with the county to provide that system. Now, what that does for us is basically save you a ton of money with communications infrastructure, dispatch services, having a dispatcher 24 hours a day, radios, equipment, portable radios, which are around $3,000 to $4,000 a piece, depending what mobile radios, which are in the units, that's about $4,000 or $5,000 a piece, plus mobile computer terminals in the units to give you additional dispatch information. So basically, you're already paying for it in your ad valorem taxes. You're just extending that agreement just to let the county provide you that service at no additional cost on what you're already paying. And that's what the ILA is all about. Any questions?
Questions, anybody?
I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we're already paying for it. We're gonna just continue it under our new program.
Correct. I
End of
mean,
story.
the only municipalities in the county that I'm aware of that use their own dispatch is Boynton Beach and Boca Raton. Every other municipality in the county is using that same agreement basis, Highland, including Delray, West Palm Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Riviera Beach, and all the small agencies. So it's just what everybody else does. Unless you have extra money that you want to spend, we'll be more happy to spend for you, but that's the way to go.
So I would say that this is a continued expression that the county is supporting our initiative to
Yes.
move forward by including the equipment. They could have been difficult. They've been very cooperative and stepping up and being very agreeable with Glenn to negotiate this. So this is great.
Been aggressively cooperative. In fact, we got this approved and sent back to us within about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So that's huge for the county. So
Peg, yeah, something.
Yes, thanks, sir. I wondered, you said it's saving a huge amount of money. Do we know what figure that is?
no, I did not.
Ballpark?
I didn't. I wouldn't want to ballpark it off the top of my head,
Okay,
but
sure.
from my own experience back in the day, each of the portable radios around about 4,000 would need about 10 of them, and each of the mobile radios is another 4,000. Would need one for each unit, including the police, with the chief and the fire marshal. So that's another maybe 10,000 right there in just in mobile radios. And what I don't know the cost of is the infrastructure, the fiber optics and the dispatch center. Most dispatch centers run about at least $1.5 to $2 million a year just to operate dispatches 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, plus the radio systems and the computers and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a huge savings for us,
Oh, that's good to
for
know.
the town.
Yes, and based upon the size of our county, which is I think one of the largest in the country, actually.
Yes.
Is there any drawback? Are we too big? Will this work great? Or do you see any kind of a negative side to this? I'm just looking ahead of time,
Well, the thing is, what you're using that service now,
right?
you're just using it through Delray. And if you're happy with the service you're getting now, there's no
So it will be comparable.
same. It's just from, instead of calling Delray Beach, you'd call Highland Beach Fire Department.
Got it. And I agree with Mr. Labadie. It seems as if the county is just holding our hand and just assisting us and has such a good proactive, positive attitude. It's great. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
This is big on a number of elements, really big.
They said it
well
couldn't
done.
be done.
Very well done.
Right?
Well ahead of schedule as well. So yeah, this is great.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I believe we were told it couldn't be done at one point.
That's correct.
So I
I
just
think a
wanted-
fire chief made some inference to that effect, didn't they?
Yes, sir. So here we
That
are.
is
Thank
correct.
you.
We were told it couldn't be done.
Yes, sir.
And-
Thank you to
And here
everyone.
we are again.
Raise the
yeah.
flag. Thank you.
Yep, we're breaking through a lot of barriers here. Okay.
Actually, Mayor, that was what we thought at one point, the single biggest obstacle for us going forward was going to be this in a local agreement. And it just kind of went poof.
Well,
Thank you.
we were told the residents would never vote for
Oh, I forgot about that.
it. Yeah. Okay, we are now on to commission
Albert,
comments.
We need a
Motion?
motion. Yeah.
We need a
sorry?
motion.
A
We need a
motion.
motion.
A motion.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, thank you. Yeah,
I
we need a
move-
motion for me to sign this thing.
I move that we authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement for fire rescue dispatch services with Palm Beach County.
I second that wholeheartedly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we're on to commission comments. John.
Oh. Okay, I do have several. And just more for everyone's sake, the audience or whoever. When President Biden announced that he was going to send home tests out, I immediately went online and I signed up, and 3 weeks later, I get my 4 tests. What's interesting is when you pull out certificate of quality with a stamp on it in red ink, it's all in Chinese. It's all in Chinese. All these FlowFlex test kits by the hundreds of millions, apparently, are courtesy of China. Just thought I'd make note of that.
I'll just add one thing. I understand they don't work in the cold weather.
Is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
my God. Does that mean they don't work in warm weather too? I don't know. It's a crazy world we live in. Can I just ask again, officially now, trespass signs on the beach? There's no progress on that. And I'm telling you now, there's
I'll get an
6,
update
7
for you.
7 signs.
Same location?
Same locations, only it's, now it's a couple homeowners are doing it.
The trick with that, and we may be revisiting this over the summer or maybe add it to strategic priorities. Some of our sign stuff's a little bit loose. Maybe it might be time to revisit this. One of the things is we do permit temporary signs. Are those temporary, and what is temporary? And we don't have a definition of what temporary means. That goes to Commissioner David, the signs we talked about last week. How long is temporary? When do we start and stop clocks? Things of that nature. We need to probably look at that as a community. But I will get you an update on those.
Just for everyone's information, at the beach, at a certain section, just outside Town Hall across, they have put in like timber, garden timbers into the, at least 3 feet down with red, black, no trespassing signs every 20 feet or so. And it's like, they don't want anybody to come up to their high water mark. And once one set of townhouses did it, then the adjoining, houses did it. So it's not, but I don't want it. Number one, it looks terrible. Number two, it will spread if they think they can do it. Okay. The veterans website, as of today, does not work. The veterans tab to our town website, I should more accurately describe it as. And I would appreciate if we can make some progress on this veterans tab that I've been talking about for a year.
Yes, sir.
Another point I'll bring out is the crosswalk lights. Apparently, some of them, as I was going through here, the lights don't come on at night.
I'll have
And
police test those.
That's an
maybe?
issue.
Yeah. Chief Hartman will get somebody out there at night to test them all.
I was out there and I tried to make it happen.
Thank
The
you.
other thing that's not working, several things here. The TV. My wife was trying to watch us at the last meeting and and a meeting before that. In fact, I think it was used in a recent newsletter, how we have a blackout in the past, but our TV is not working. Even now, as I understand it, our TV is not, TV channel.
Channel's not working?
TV channel 99 hasn't been working for probably 2 months now.
What?
Okay, so
Okay, I had no
I'm telling
idea.
you, my wife is just
First time hearing it.
trying to watch. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
At first I thought, okay, it's just a mistake or
Are
whatever.
you on AT&T, Comcast?
Comcast.
Comcast.
Okay, lastly, I have to make reference for those who are watching this in video, since you're not going to see it on TV. I tried to express some of my comments and concerns about what's being said relative to the referendum. If you've had a chance to look at that at the latest publication of the Town of Highland Beach Forum, which I think is an excellent newsletter, only because it does represent both sides, both arguments, not just one side as the Committee to Save Highland Beach, the Godzilla out there that is presenting only a negative view of what we're trying to do here. That's my opinion. And I think in the end, stepping above the 5 questions, the whole point of these 5 questions is to improve the overall effectiveness, efficiency of governance for the town of Highland Beach with the capabilities we need to deliver on the services to ensure the health and safety of this town. Man, that just rattled right off the top of my head. And I truly believe that in my heart. In order to do that, we need trust, we need transparency, we need continued teamwork, but we have to make decisions. And some of those decisions today are hampered by what happened in the past that is crippling us in some ways about doing the right things for the future. I think that is, in essence, what this is all about. And I hope that our residents will look at these questions and try and understand them before they listen to, propaganda. Thank you very much.
We're going to jump over to Natasha because she has to leave us at 3:30.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't really have much to say. I thought the food truck event was excellent, as always. I thought the food was really good. I particularly enjoyed the hot dogs on the barbecue. That was a really good addition, and I thought a creative way to deliver food quickly. So that was really great. I've looked at a lot of the emails flying back and forth, a lot of really good points coming up, but one that I didn't see, isn't it in our charter that we can only have referendums between the month of November and April?
I think it was March. I think it would be in March. I think.
Like
No, it's
November?
the opposite direction. So it's November through April. We can't have midsummer.
Right, exactly.
You can't have
So,
summertime.
so I thought everybody brought up a lot of good points, but one thing that I haven't seen is My letter was about the spending limits, and of course, I'm very much in favor of all five, but I think the spending limit definitely makes a lot of sense to increase it to 5% of our overall budget. And one thing that hasn't been thrown around is, I guess, one quick question for Linelda, isn't it like 90 days advance or 95 days advance notice we need of a referendum in order to get it in the ballot, like for the supervisor of elections? Don't they need a lead time?
Yes, they require the municipalities to give them the ballot language 95 days prior
Okay.
to the election date.
So with respect to this voting for, spending limits, on this $350,000, another component of this is how it really handcuffs us, because we can only have referendums between November and April. We have to get the ballot language in 95 days prior. We have, my point is, and it's expensive. If we get it in during, the regular elections, I think it's, I don't know, 15,000. If we do a special referendum, it's $60,000. And when I went to the food truck event, a lot of people were saying they weren't in favor because of the way they were concerned about the money. Well, what isn't being said is the cost of the referendums, how limited we are in the timing of the referendums and the lead time of the referendums for these very small projects. And as I dig into this fund balance and, and the cost of inflation and, what we spend on things, it just, I don't think everyone is completely informed. And it's one of those nuances that we at the commission are know about, and not everybody knows about this. And so they think that people who are opposing it are watching out for them for their finances, but it's costing people money because of all this lead time doing the referendums themselves. And I don't expect everyone to know all the details, but as Commissioner Shoemaker was saying, please trust in us that we are taking all these factors into consideration. And I am in favor of all these. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Move over to Evelyn.
Okay, two things. One, to me, a temporary sign is not one stuck in the ground with 2x4s. That lends a little more permanence to the idea. Just say it. To follow up what Natasha said, one of the things people are afraid that we're going to have multiple projects that are going to be over $1 million. Well, we can only do that up to what's in our reserves. So if you have $2 million in your reserves, you can only do 2 projects. And then there's no money to use, because if we have to raise the money, then it has to go to referendum anyway. So you're not talking about a lot of issues. But the difference between that 350 and the $1 million does cover a lot of issues. And those are a lot of small things that make a big difference in the livability of this town. And I think people need to keep all of that in the front of their minds when they look over that referendum. That's it.
Peggy, all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an update on Tallahassee last week. Our appropriations for 800,000, 750,000, and 60,000 are in very good hands. Just to remind everyone, one of the bill sponsors for the fire and rescue $800,000 is sponsored by Senator Jennifer Bradley, whose husband Rob was an appropriations chair in the immediate past. She is the one also sponsoring the recertification bill, and she is very much into safety and having operational safety for municipalities. And so we're in very good hands there. The bill is sitting, all the bills are sitting in the Appropriations Committee. And at the suggestion of Representative Caruso and other people at the League of Cities, I drafted handwritten letters to the two chairs, Representative Trumbull on the House side and Senator Kelly Stargell on the Senate side. And so they're sitting in a great place. We'll keep an eye on it. I'm sure Mr. Laverty and Teresa will let you know as they move around. The League of Cities visited most all of the representatives, some senators from our area. Representative Cruz has spent a great deal of time with us. There were probably anywhere between 12 and 25 town officials walking around in a group and then splintering off for their individual senators or reps if they had a special time reserved. That's how it works. You go in a group and you say, this is what we want as a community, large community, many towns represented. And I think everyone was hearing that we want assistance in home rule in the terms of the Airbnbs, in terms of abilities to still manage our ordinances. And then two things that the league supported and the general representatives there from the different towns were the no smoking ban on public parks and beaches, which apparently has just been sort of overlooked, that people shouldn't send their kids to the beach and then 30 cigar smoking guys sit next to them. And that's an extreme example, but that's been they've been very proactive about that. Secondly, on the, the sovereign immunity bill, which would raise the limits that someone could sue, has gone the opposite direction. They're looking at raising that from 200,000 to 300,000 per person. That the league opposes, but I'm not sure why it's going the opposite direction. A PTSD workers' comp bill is very popular and is moving forward to apply to first responders, firefighters, police. And I don't think there's much opposition to that. It's moving quickly, and that we all support it at the league level. And financial disclosures, they being the Senate and House, are clamping down on the expanded version of financial disclosures for elected officials. I'm not sure why, but that's what's happening there. And
Excuse me, how does that differ from what's currently being done on financial disclosures?
That's a good question. Currently, it's rather a loose disclosure as, yes, I hold stocks. Yes, I have 3 old Mustangs. I have a vacation home in another state, or let's say I have 3 buildings in my own town, which are subject to town rule. They're looking at itemizing that in fuller detail and expanding the scope of what would be reported. Apparently there was, I don't know why, we're not sure why, but apparently there was in other parts of the state more situations where people were perhaps not reporting fully or specifically. They're supposed to have an update on that a week from Monday. So I'll bring it back if I hear more. And lastly, of course, I actually ran into on the street, ran into CFO Jimmy Petronas. He asked how our fire department was going because he recognized my car, and said if there's anything we need to do, have Marshall reach out or us reach out. And then our officials were very open and warm, happy to help us. Senator Polsky, Representative Caruso, and I think we're in a good place. They know who we are now, and it's nice to have that. And the league is amazing. I don't know what our towns would do without the league. We are still reported to be the #1 rated League of Cities in the country in terms of the state of Florida, representing the people and the towns and cities and villages. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mayor,
Quick question. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask, so your optimism about the opportunities for grants and the lobbying
Yes.
is because of the lobbyists as well? I mean, what he's doing or whoever?
He's definitely an asset so far. I think, yes, his connections are very thorough. And for example, helped put us with Senator Bradley, who was already fashioning this this other bill for the building recertification. The hiccup in that, I know it was brought up last meeting and I wasn't fully prepared to speak, but the uncertainty of that is how to, once inspections are done, how to enforce the actual improvements to the condo. So we'll see how that plays out in the next 4 weeks. But because of the sponsor, I wouldn't have known personally. Let's go to Senator Jennifer Bradley, who's from the northeast section of Florida, just north of the Space Coast. So he's an asset there. And then what's another asset is Marshall having gone up there last month and my going up there last month and this month, because when people show up from the commission and council, it just, and we review the cases that we're making with the League of Cities who says, yes, Highland Beach needs their fire department. It just adds a lot of impetus to the efforts, and people know what we're doing. So if that's a help to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks for sending me.
Just a couple of quick things. One, for tomorrow's meeting, we will go through the strategic priorities and rank them.
Do whatever you want. No, it's kidding. Yeah, they're presented based on their last ranking, so we could re-rank them.
Re-rank them. That's
Whatever
the
you want to do. Well, I
expectation.
just gave you the list, what's been completed, what remains, things that we've talked about that have popped up. I'm sure I missed a few things that are important to you all that you want to add to the list, but yeah.
Okay, for John's benefit, you weren't here when we did the ranking and the merging and all that jazz, right? No,
I
I don't
guess
think
I
so.
wasn't, but I'm quite familiar. I went through all of it.
When we had them in various segments and then we ranked them within the segments and then we merged them. You were part of that?
No, I guess I was in Idaho or something at the time, but when I went through the package I saw that we got in advance, I went through, I see how it was done, so I'm up to speed on it.
So you're up to speed. Okay.
Absolutely.
And again, I just took, if you notice in the body of the document, I took the master list, which is the master ranking, and then basically unranked them and just put them into the bucket categories to see how they're being handled. So they're not
Right.
ranked within organizational excellence and community safety, but the master list is ranking them.
No, I saw what you did.
Okay.
Great job at it. I just wanted to make sure that
Thank you for
John is aware of what we did, so he had a little bit of history, and that would prepare him for what we'll probably do tomorrow. Might be worth a phone call to Natasha just to give her some background.
What was not done is that in each of the category or sections, they were listed by bullet, not necessarily
Right,
by
exactly.
priority,
Right.
like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to do that.
At the end of the document, it shows you the overall master ranking of all the projects. I just took them and put them into where who's responsible for deploying them.
Yeah.
That's all.
So my thinking, want to just kick it around, is that we might want to add things to it that aren't on it
Yes,
and then prioritize them.
yes,
You see, quick touch on the background was Marshall was prioritizing himself. And we didn't think that was fair or right, because we as a commission might have expectations that were different than where he was spending his time. And there'd be frustration built up on our part, say, hey, why isn't this getting done? Well, he didn't know that we as a commission thought that was a priority. So when you think back on really what our role is, one is setting priorities that the town should be working on. And he appreciated it because now we're all in sync. Well, it's time to do it again. So tomorrow we'll do some ranking. We'll add some things. We may change our mind. There may be things on the list that we don't think they're that important anymore.
that's right.
And either put them at the bottom or take them off.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like the bullets necessarily. I thought they should be numbered as in terms of priority.
And they will be
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Very good.
So he may already made a note. He'll bring Natasha up to speed. So it should be a productive day tomorrow and a little bit of debating, which is always healthy. Okay. Last thing I just had was I thought it was a really good discussion today on our funding, where it should go, how much we think we should have in reserves from 0 up to 2 million. And we'll settle in on a number that we all ended up being a little comfortable with, but never totally comfortable. And that's what good debates are. So
Very good.
well done. I thought we all did, all got our got our feelings out. So that was great. Glenn, anything from the legal side? Okay. Marshall, all yours.
Thank you. Quick responses to that. The veterans page sent to you, Commissioner Shoemaker, is set as private, so you can look at it before we go public. So you're not going to see, the public can't get to it. It's restricted for your viewing only. So once you give us a little bit of a thumbs up, we'll move forward. Channel 99 has been working here, so we'll keep on digging, but it might be throughout the community. But we, as of last week, had no problems with the PEG channel. So we will continue investigating. You may want to call Comcast, or we may work with them to see if they're having a hard time putting it back out to the end users. But we off-site, on campus, and kicking that out is working. So
It's just that Comcast puts a dialogue across the TV screen saying this channel is no longer working. So it's like, wow.
and Comcast is known for weird stuff like that. So we'll keep looking, but it was working as of last week. So I'm just going to give you some basic updates. So
Again, for Comcast, it wasn't though. I'm just saying.
we use Comcast here. We have Comcast in the building. That's what
But
we use
I'm
to
saying
view.
At the Highland Beach Club,
Club.
because even a couple of the members of the Highland, it wasn't working, at least for our
Okay.
complex.
Okay. Okay, what's going on here? So, just a couple quick updates. So we will be going out to bid for the construction manager at risk. They will come in and help us finish the design and work towards the finishing of construction. That process is governed by Florida statute, so it takes a little bit of time. There will be a committee similar to hiring the architect that will review the proposals that are received, rank, negotiate, and then identify a finalist for negotiations once we get those in, and then we'll move forward. That process will probably take us into April.
Could you walk us through that for a second? That is required by state?
Yeah, basically it's considered like a CCNA is the process. It's kind of a design, construction, engineering, architectural consultant. So there's a statute that governs how we can go out to bid and solicit those services. So we have to follow that process. So there's a committee, a cone of silence, all the good stuff.
Amazing.
Mr. Remus, Chief Hartman, and Mr. Joseph will again sit on that committee to review and bring us back somebody that will be the construction manager at risk. Then we'll enter into negotiations to find out what a gross maximum price would be and or a cost plus scenario. We'll work with them to come up with what that is. So it's a little bit of a peculiar step, but nonetheless, it's what's governed by the state. So we're going to move into that. We've already started. It'll be on the streets tomorrow. So,
And our expectations are that this individual, when he goes through it all, might come up with some construction savings,
construction savings,
design savings. et
design
cetera, et
savings.
cetera.
Don't use this material, use this material. Consider this process versus this process.
Right.
Attack the project, this type of phasing versus this type of phasing, and kind of identify what the market's directing and how they can get that done in a more cost-effective manner.
Good. Okay.
So that's moving forward. Again, John Ford from John Ford and Associates will probably be our financial advisor. They've given us a proposal along with PFM, looked through them. David's had a lot of successful work with them, with John Ford and Associates. The price is the same between the two. So we're going to probably go with John. So John's talked to a few things. He's going to get a proposal in place. Then we'll have a financial advisor to help us start making some of these decisions and how we want to procure some
Good.
type of finance vehicle. So that's in place.
And
So
that's a
those are going-
statutory requirement also. David can't do that.
Oh, yeah, no, and we need to have a bond counsel, even though you're not doing bond, you got to have a special legal attorney that reviews the financing and the way in which you do it. That'll be done through Torsivia's office, whether they have to pick up Skip on the side or do something, somebody in their office, though they'll take care of it. But there'll be some legal consults to review the instruments selected. I know it's frustrating.
It's-
I'll always find a way to frustrate you, Mayor.
You're doing a
So-
good job.
So,
And we have
you know,
so many people who think that we can just do what we want and there's loopholes for everything and there's no restrictions and we're out of control.
I borrowed more
Unbelievable.
money for our building with, putting three banks against each other and I just do it,
Done.
but no, not
This- not with these-
municipalities.
You need a statute. No, I won't say that.
Okay,
so,
I'm on board. No
that's
problem.
moving forward. Met with Sam. The design's coming forward a little bit more. So you'll start seeing some revisions to the architecturals, but the final design pieces will be kind of tied in with the construction manager to see what really works in the marketplace. Other than that, everything, again, investment policy, you loosely spoke about that. I've added to the strategic priorities plan. We do need to take a closer look at that a little bit, maybe either to give ourselves some more flexibility or, what strategies do we truly want to deploy? We're very restrictive. I don't know how much further we can go from that, but we may wish to, it might be time to revisit that. So as you know, we use PNC as our custodian of assets, which is required by the policy, which in essence, we spend anything we earn on the custodial relationship, but it's required under policy. If we draw down some of the general funds, we may not need a custodial, or PNC may not want to be our custodial because they have a minimum. Usually it's like 50 to 100 million. They're doing a lot less for us because we're their banking partners. We spend some of our general fund or fund balance. No one's going to be wanting to be a custodian of what to us is a lot of money, or as myself, as your town manager, is a big chunk of money. To them, it's really nothing. So that's all coming to bear as we make some of these decisions will result in other decisions we have to make in our financial management systems here. Other than that, I'm all good until tomorrow.
Chief? Any update on the boat?
Yeah, when's that going in the
Delivery,
water?
You're in the water?
No, when is it?
No, we'll be taking delivery of it next week. We have some tests to do, take it out in the ocean, and we will be operational in the first week in March. We'll let you know more about that.
So we're still holding to the to March 1 for the official.
We're trying to get the
ribbon
official
cutting, whatever.
on March 1st, and we're trying to tie that up right now, but we'll keep you posted for sure.
Great.
We'll be out there in a few weeks.
Okay.
We'll give you more.
Just one quick thing on the last food truck event. I got nothing but rave reviews on that. I mean, people were super happy, super thrilled.
I would have to tell you, I spoke to somebody who I thought was going to be really upset about it, and they just said how great the event was. So I hope that maybe we come back with a proposal to find a way to continue that as a community event of some sort. But yeah, it was very popular again.
I mean, it's just wonderful bringing the community together. I get to meet people I've never met before. I just think they enjoy meeting the commissioners. It's one thing if they're watching on TV or reviewing the tapes. It's another thing just to be able to sit down and chat with them. You hear what some of their issues are, or you just find out about their grandchildren. I mean, it's just really nice. Okay. Still takes too long to get the food out, but while you're standing there, you got a chance to talk to somebody. So
that's what the hot
just
dogs
a
were. So
win-win. The hot dogs were a home run.
If
I'll
you're
tell
feeling
you.
peckish or faint, just go grab a hot dog.
You bet.
Right.
I love the hot dogs, but everybody else did. I mean, it was just a
great.
lovely evening.
So a suggestion on that is, because it takes so long, I mean, literally half hour, 45 minutes, to have a truck that does, cold cut sandwiches, that can go real fast.
Nothing goes real
Nothing
fast.
goes fast, John.
I've tried all different kinds.
I worked it during college. That's what I did. I was in a food truck doing
I'll
submarine
tell you,
sandwiches.
Evelyn and I came together and we got here, it was about 4:30. And Evelyn said, you know what, why don't we grab something to eat now?
Right.
Because the last time, by the time we went to get something to eat, the boss already turned them all off and they were shutting down. Okay. So it was a great idea. So we went up to the barbecue, and the woman behind the desk there was just taking orders after orders of her. So I said, about how long it will be? She said, oh, he's preparing it all right now.
Yeah.
It still took 20 minutes.
Oh, it still took 20. I'm just saying, cold cut submarine sandwiches could be done faster. But anyways, the other point to reinforce what you're saying, I think we should be doing these without the referendum in the future.
Yeah.
Just as
Just
a
events.
social, community
exactly.
event, just
because.
for whatever.
No reason at all.
Yeah. So, and that's something we should keep in our budget going forward in the future.
Well, I'll bring back the proposals and you guys could add that in as you see fit.
Once a quarter.
We might have another reason to do these things.
And we'll have the unaddressed, reserves for.
Did you save me a hot dog? I'm sorry, I couldn't be here. Did you save me a hot dog?
Yeah, right.
It's in the back freezer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, they just,
Take it home.
I mean, certainly the food truck brings the people out. You got to have something to bring them out. But it's just a very warm environment. The people are happy. They're great.
And before all the
Absolutely.
construction starts, we got a lot of nice space out there.
Yeah, we're going to have nothing for a year. We'll have no space.
Yeah.
Question, Mayor?
Yeah.
Are we going to christen the boat when it arrives?
Yeah, it's going to be March 1st, 10 o'clock,
Got it.
right?
Little champagne
All right,
action
come
on
on
the
back
bow.
up.
Well, I didn't know.
Oh,
we had
no, no,
dates
we're
set
making a
already and
commitment.
time. What?
We're
No,
making a commitment.
it's soft-sided. You can't
Can we
break a
count
bottle.
on
Oh,
it?
on it.
darn. Well, we'll bring
Yeah,
a hammer.
we're working through that now. We'll keep you posted.
We will keep you posted.
You're ahead of me here.
In other words, don't do it.
What?
Ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yeah, ribbon
Yeah, yeah.
cutting. That'll be
You got
good.
the ribbons?
I think you have. Don't you have to christen a boat for good luck?
I believe so.
That would be a good thing.
All right. No bananas.
Maybe we
Okay.
could have a taco truck to christen the boat.
There we go.
I mean, a food truck event. I'm partial to the tacos.
We could do breakfast. It's 10 o'clock. Here we go.
You don't have to have a christening necessarily in the water. You can have it in a parking lot here, right?
Yeah. Breakfast with the captain. Okay, we all set? Okay, at 3:49, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.